Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30, so inquiry's resumed. I'd just check for any housekeeping matters before we start in earnest. Mr. Robson.
Yes, sir. Just to reiterate what I think has just been told to you, but in the public forum, that the link for the closing submissions and the Teams access should be available on the core documents page of the appeal site on the council's website, and so members of the public who want to observe that can access it through that link, and we will make sure that people are aware.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, just to publicise it, for lack of a better word, that'll be Thursday next week at 10 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, so just a couple of things. So first of all, so on conditions, I think Mr. Cusson wants to catch up with Mr. Baker-Adams at some point today, and then hopefully in the next day or so we can circulate a new version of the conditions for the session, which I think we're doing on this Thursday, is that?
Well, I'm fairly flexible.
Yeah.
Let's see how we go Thursday, and we'll see where we are. So, but I'll ask you, Mr. Robson, whether you'd rather do that Thursday or leave it. So let's see where we get, how we go.
Okay, thank you. And so just on timetable, I mean, obviously today we have Mr. Holliday on Green Wedge. He's the only witness that I have ready to go today. I think that means we might well have a short day today. Tomorrow I've got two witnesses, so Mr. Stacey on affordable housing, Mr. Smith on golf, so that's going to be a longer day, but I think we will complete within the day. And then Thursday is planning, which I think again would be shorter than a day, but we may well have the time to do the conditions on the 106, so that seems to be the programme in terms of where we are, if you're content with that. So.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm quite happy with progress, so thank you. Right, okay, so if there's no more housekeeping, we'll start matters in earnest with the appellant's first witness.
Thank you. Can you please confirm to the inquiry you are Michael Gary Holliday?
Yes, that's right.
And you tell us in your main proof you have a BA Honours degree and a Master of Philosophy degree in Landscape Design, that you're a Fellow of the Landscape Institute and a Director of FPCR Environment and Design Limited. Is that all correct?
Yes.
And you have been a partner director of the practice for over 26 years. You have over 39 years experience of landscape and development projects. And you are a professional practice assessor and a member of the membership admission panel on behalf of the Landscape Institute. Is that all correct?
Yes.
You're also a registered assessor with the Building with Nature initiative, correct?
Yes.
And you explain in your main proof at 1.2 that your company, FPCR, have been involved in the appeal since 2017. You yourself have become involved from the summer of 2025 onwards, correct?
That's right.
And you give at 1.3 the relevant declaration that the evidence you've prepared is true and has been prepared in accordance with the guidance of your professional institution, and you confirm that the opinions expressed are your true and professional opinions. And does that apply to your proof, rebuttal and your oral evidence?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Now, just in terms of your familiarity of the site, how many times have you visited the site, and how familiar are you with the site?
Yeah, I've been about, I think, 4 times. And as part of the area, I have done previous work in the area, so I'm going back over the years. I was actually involved in the Gelson site at Barrowcliff Way, sort of 10 years ago, when more the LVIA worked for that application.
Thank you. So can we start, please, with some agreed matters? The landscape context, can you just introduce us to that in terms of where we are on that?
Yes, well, I think on that one we're fairly in agreement with the council. It's obviously it's a golf course site. It's not typical countryside or farmland, so it's an area that's a bit more disturbed than man influenced already. So that in landscape and visual terms, reduces its sensitivity. I think we're agreed on that. I think it's quite unusual for a site of this size, and this sort of number of dwellings, not to have a landscape reason for refusal, and I think that's fair and reflects the type of site that it is in those terms.
Yeah. So there's obviously agreed not to be a landscape or visual reason for refusal here. Are there any issues raised with the landscape visual impact assessment by the council?
No, and I think that's in the statement of common ground.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the reasons why the view's been reached, that there is not any unacceptable landscape and visual effects in the medium term, what relevance does the relative visibility of the site have to that?
Well, I think it feeds into it. This is a visually well-contained site, so that inevitably the site itself will change, to a high degree, certainly where the houses would be built. But the high degree of sort of vegetation around the edges of the site really limits any effects, landscape visual terms, on the wider area, and that, in overall terms, reduces the level of effect compared to, say, a site that would be much more widely visible. Yeah.
And Mr. Collins, in his proof at 4.47 and in his evidence in cross-examination, said his view was it wasn't a valued landscape, it wasn't particularly sensitive, it was typical of urban fringe, and I think the highest he put it was not unpleasant. What do you say to that?
Yes, I agree. It's not valued landscape and it's not highly sensitive. It is already heavily modified by man's activities over the last sort of 30 odd years. It's not unpleasant. It's pleasant enough site, but it's nothing special in landscape terms.
Nothing special, thank you. And just to have some clarity on this, obviously what's agreed in the statement of common ground, I think, is no adverse visual and landscape effects in the medium term. What do you understand medium term to mean?
Well, I don't think it's a defined term, but in my view, I would say something like 10 years,
10
medium
years.
term. We tend to assess after 15 years as longer term for planting to get established, so
Okay.
a bit shorter than that maybe.
Thank you. Can you then just explain to us...
Sorry, Mr. Merici. I'm struggling to pick you up, Mr. Holliday. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I think it's quite a directional mic.
So I need to talk to it.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. It's
Yeah.
mic being hard of hearing. That's a problem rather than you, I
quiet.
suspect. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Merici.
I can't get any closer. That's
Thank
the
you.
other thing.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr.
No,
Merici.
that's fine. That's fine.
If people don't think I'm being rude, then I'll look in this direction.
Yeah, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Yeah, if you look in that direction, I think it will help rather than...
Thank you.
That's
Thank
okay. So could you just help us with what the differences are between a landscape and visual impact assessment? We know that's not an issue. And a green wedge assessment. What are the differences between those?
Well, they are different things. So landscape and visual, all of us follow guidance that the Institute puts out, which gives a structure and guidance to how we do that, and it's looking at the effects on landscape as a resource in itself and the visual effects on people. Green wedge is a different thing altogether, and obviously it's a specific policy here. It has its own purposes. So in terms of assessing the effect on that, it's a completely different exercise. But I think some of the techniques that we use as landscape architects can be helpful at coming to those judgments for the green wedge, in terms of looking at the baseline, what's there on site at the moment, and the surrounding area, and how any changes influence that wider area. And I think that's what both Mr. Collins and myself have done really in our proofs. We have come to different conclusions, but it's a similar approach.
Thank you. And obviously Mr. Collins accepted in his proof and in his cross-examination that landscape and visual perceptual matters can be relevant to whether green wedge objectives are met, I think especially in relation to coalescence. Do you agree or disagree with that? Yes,
I do. I think perceptual matters are very important, and that's a large part of what we do in landscape in terms of assessment. There's obviously a physical element of things like distances and areas, but a lot of it is about how an area is experienced, how it feels.
Thank you. Now, just on green wedge policy then, if we can just turn to that. You've just talked about where perceptual matters fit in. So to what extent is assessment of compliance with green wedge policy a plan-based exercise, or is it something more?
I think it's something more. You've got to get beyond just looking at the plan and what, obviously, whether it's in one of these policy areas or not, obviously relevant, but it's how any scheme is going to affect what that policy is put together for. That's what matters, and it's not what's on the ground and how it's experienced that you come to those judgments.
Okay, thank you. Now, I discussed at some length the green wedge study from 2016 with Mr. Collins and his evidence. What value does that have in your view, the green wedge study?
I think it does have a value. It's something that we obviously need to look at. It is 10 years old now. Quite a lot has changed in the area over that time. So I think you have to read it in context, but look at how the area is today and how those functions and purposes apply as the area is now.
Thank you. Before looking further at green wedge study and green wedge policy, the neighbourhood plan, now I know the council are not pursuing a point on this, but policy BNP2 in the neighbourhood plan, that's CD 6.30, that deals with green wedge. What does it add, in your view, if anything, to CS16?
I don't think it really adds anything to CS16. It sort of refers back to CS16, so it largely covers the same point.
Okay. Is there anything in the, I don't know whether we should look at it, but is there anything in the explanatory text that is relevant in the neighbourhood plan in your view? So I don't know whether it's worth looking at it. CD 6.30.
Let's have a look.
I think.
It talks about the same principles. It's got to be a barrier to avoid joining up settlements. Yep. And talks about the balance with new development.
Okay, thank you. And in your proof, please, if we just look at your proof at 3.14, 3.14 through to 3.18, you look further at the neighbourhood plan and talk about the fact that the site falls within, I think, what that plan calls character area F, the green wedge. Are there any points from that you want to draw out at this stage?
Yeah, I maybe just point out that's a character area in the neighbourhood plan. That's not quite the same as the green wedge policy area, so the areas don't match quite the same. Yeah. But it does talk about Blaby being separated from Whetstone by the bypass, and that's in my proof at 3.16. And I come back to that. I think is the main factor here. That's where the difference between these two settlements lies. And it goes on to talk about that bit being a particularly sensitive part of the green wedge. I think my proof 3.18 refers to it, where, in my view, not in that area.
So the sensitive area is what I think is in the green wedge policy is parcel A, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay, so that's west of Blaby, effectively.
Yes, that's my view.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Does the neighbourhood plan say anything specific about the golf course in relation to green wedge?
I think the allocation. Where are we?
Oh, this is the Davidson site, is it?
Yes, I think
S2.
Is it CD 632?
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, so CD 632. That's S1. It's CD 631, I think. Is that right?
632, is it?
Oh yeah, I see it. No,
and it does talk about so obviously part of the Davidson site was the northern edge of the golf course, and it talks in there that about the allocation. It considered to they're not considered to undermine the overall function of the green wedge to a significant extent. I know that's not the whole of our site, but I think to me that suggests that the authors of this work considered that the land west of Blaby, between Blaby and Whetstone, around the bypass, is the most sensitive in terms of separation, whereas this side of the road less so. Well, that's how I read that.
Okay, thank you. Now, could we then look, please, at policy CS16 in terms of its functions? I think we all know what they are now, the 4 functions. The first one is obviously preventing the merging of settlements, and I think in truth this is probably where the greatest degree of dispute lies between you and Mr. Collins. So can we look at Mr. Collins's plate 4.1 in his proof, please? So this is on his page 18.
Yes.
So Mr. Collins marks up a plan with these sort of black striped lines. What observations do you have on that sketch to begin with?
Well, I think the sketch doesn't reflect the experience on the ground of where the built form already is, where the experience of Blaby is, which I've said in a number of places in my proof. You know, I believe you feel like you've entered Blaby when you get north of the roundabout. I think if the appeal site was developed, then inevitably that wouldn't be green wedge. We would, the layout as shown does keep quite an open frontage, but you would be aware that there was development behind it, so it would link with the business park to the south. But I think to the west of Lutterworth Road there's already a significant amount of built development that makes it feel like you are in the settlement. So in my view the gap or the separation comes along the bypass corridor to the west of that built development, and it wouldn't make any difference to experience of whether you feel you're in one place or the other. Yeah. But I also note Mr. Collins has only hatched up that end of the site and not the other, so I presume he means this is where he considers the sensitivity lies rather than towards Winchester Road to the east. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what's the starting point then for an assessment of this first function of preventing the merging of settlements? What's your starting point?
Well, I think you start by thinking, well, where are the settlements in the first place? Where do you experience Blaby, Whetstone, Countersthorpe? Because then it's what difference are you going to make to that experience?
I mean, Mr. Collins obviously in his evidence referred and I think took his measurements, as he confirmed, from the defined settlement boundary. Is that the right approach?
No, I don't believe so. I think you've got to look at where you're going to experience things from, and what difference you make to that. Yeah,
and I mean, can you just help me on this? I mean, does it matter which place you're in? I mean, does it matter whether you're in Whetstone or Blaby?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's important for people and visitors to understand settlement identity, to know whether you're in one place or another, whether that's, you know, for building community or just finding your way around. So I think it is an important factor, but it's not always about distance. It's about being clear. Yeah.
So what do you use then? And obviously you've said you don't agree with Mr. Collins's use of the settlement boundary itself. What do you use to identify where a settlement starts and ends?
I think there's a number of factors that you consider. Built form is obviously one of them, and open areas, but even matters like signage, names, addresses even. You know, the fact here that you arrive north of the roundabout, you see a sign that says Blaby Business Park, immediately flags that you're in Blaby, along with the road sign at the other side of the road and things like that.
Okay. Right, so let's just go through your understanding of these settlements. So first of all, can we start with Blaby and Whetstone and any issue of coalescence between those? And obviously, Mr. Collins made clear that that's the area where he considers the coalescence to be material and significant, rather than Blaby and Countersthorpe. So Blaby and Whetstone to start with. Any general points by way of introduction to how we approach those two settlements?
Well, I think you visit the area, you look at it, you make the journeys, as has been set out for the inspector to do in the site visit, and you look at what you experience. I mean, with Whetstone, the bypass very clearly forms an edge to that settlement, I think, is hard up against it. And then there's the gap of some more open land before you reach Blaby. Now on the ground, in places that's pretty narrow, but I still think you have that feeling of start and finish and move, once you move across the bypass from being in one place to the other. So yeah, to the north of our site at Grove Road on the next roundabout up, there's some fairly recent development gone in there on the Blaby side, but you cross the roundabout and you know that you've got from Whetstone to Blaby. Similarly, south of this appeal site, with the roundabout south of opposite the business park, again, you in my view, you cross the roundabout, you see the signs, you see the built development, and you feel that you've changed from one place to another.
Okay. So if we look at can we look in your appendices, please, at figure 1?
Maybe, sorry, I should just also say, for this particular bit of Green Wedge, there aren't many places, or any places, really, other than those roads that cross it, where you do get that experience. And I think that's something that Mr. Collins raised in his proof, and I think is fair. It's not somewhere that there's wide areas of countryside and footpaths that you're going to get different perspectives. It does largely come down to the roads that cross between the two. Sorry.
Yeah, so your figure 1 in your appendices, which shows the various photo viewpoints as you go along Luttersworth Road, and obviously I went on a walk through these with Mr. Collins. I'm not going to take you back on that walk, but can you just help me on this? I mean, first of all, Mr. Collins was keen to emphasise the experience as you move along Wychwood Road in Whetstone onto the roundabout and then travel into Blaby. How do you characterise that experience of someone driving? And I think it was driving that we were talking about from Whetstone to Blaby, having come off Wychwood Road. Yeah,
well, there's driving or walking, I think, but both apply. As you get across the roundabout, you see built form. First off, you see the building in the garden centre site that's actually, I think it's a kitchen company. So you'll see all this on site. And then you move around and see the signs for the business park. And then as you align more with Lutterworth Road itself, you see that series of different bits of built form up to the housing at Westfield Close, which is the housing that was done on the rugby club site. And you get a bit of an overlapping of those buildings that makes you feel like you're already in the settlement. I accept it's not as solid a built form as most of the town itself, but it still feels like you're in built form. As you move on up, obviously there is the gap of where the rugby pitch is, but it is a single rugby pitch that you experience there. It doesn't feel to me like a sort of extensive area of countryside or anything. It's just an incidental sports field at part of the town. Yeah. Okay. And obviously on the other side of the road you see the golf course or the hedge that goes with it, and as time goes on and the reserve sites develop, then obviously it'll be more built form on the other side of the road too.
Yeah. And I mean, when you stand, we've got viewpoints of this, but I mean, when you stand near the entrance to the golf course, I mean, what do you see of the golf course from us?
Well, you see the buildings and the car park, you see some of the golf course and the planting on there.
Okay, thank you. So if the inspector were to agree with you that really the separation here now, as you experience it, is the bypass and the corridor, and that's what provides a separation, would the identity of the separate settlements be lost, in your view, if the development were granted planning permission? That obviously appears to be Mr. Collins' view.
No, it wouldn't, definitely.
Why is that?
Because you already feel like you're in Blaby when you reach the appeal site.
And I mean, is this an unusual situation or a common situation where you have separate identities, albeit the built form has evolved in the way that you've discussed? Is that an unusual situation?
No, I don't think it's unusual. You can get different, extent of built form on the edge of settlements, and sometimes the experience of being in one place or another can be a very short distance. For identities, you'd think of many examples of towns where it might be something like a river that means one side of the river you're in one place, the other side of the river you're somewhere else, but you clearly know where you are, even though the distance might be short. Now, I know we haven't got a river here, but I think the bypass effectively does the same job of being a clear way of people understanding whether you're one place or the other, plus the experience of travelling up and down that bypass where you do experience bits, not too much, but you do see the corridor widen out in places to know that there's a difference.
Okay, thank you. And then I think finally on Whetstone and Blaby and the separation or coalescence between those, Mr. Collins's evidence was to suggest that we were at some kind of tipping point. Are we?
No, not in my view.
And why is that?
Because it's not a piece of land that makes you feel like that's where the gap or the separation is. I don't think any visitor or local, well, I can't speak for local people, but certainly my experience of going up down there, you wouldn't think, oh, I've come from some area of countryside, I'm now passing some critical gap before I reach the next town as you pass the golf course. It just feels like you're already in Blaby. So that, am I in one place or another experience, wouldn't change in my view.
All right, so we move on to Blaby and Countersthorpe, and obviously this is less of an issue for Mr. Collins. He accepted it wasn't material or significant in terms of the impacts on Green Wedge, but it has been raised, so we just need to talk about it. I think what he said in his evidence was it didn't reach the fail point on the policy. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree it wouldn't reach a fail point on the policy.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't think it'll make much difference at all to any experience, for the reasons I've set out in the proof, that it's very visually contained along that road. It's not, apart from the pedestrian cycle access, I mean, there's a chance maybe in winter that you glimpse the odd roof, but really the experience is going to be very little different to how it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think Mr. Collins accepted in his proof and in his cross-examination that the visual perception is limited between Blaby and Countersthorpe. Is that a view you agree with?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. What about the footpaths, though, that run along the northern edge of the site? There's obviously evidence given about the impact of those in relation to any coalescence between Blaby and Countersthorpe. What do you say about those?
Yeah, I think there's different things to consider with the footpaths. Best we don't get them mixed up. So in terms of landscape and visual effects, that's one thing, and that's assessed in our LVA that went in with the application, and we've accepted some adverse effects for users of those routes in the way that we typically assess visual change. So particularly for the footpath that crosses the golf course, we've identified as a major moderate effect, I think, at completion, because at the moment you pass in an open area and it's going to be more developed. I think in terms of, when we were discussing it with Mr. Collins, we were talking about the use of those footpaths and the experience of place in terms of Green Wedge, and whether that was going to harm the feeling of separation. And I think that's a different matter altogether. Certainly the northern path, the Z67-1, 56-4, already runs along the edge of Blaby. You feel like you're on the edge of Blaby, going from one place to another. You would have a lot more built form the other side, but you would still feel you were probably within Blaby rather than on the edge of it. The one that crosses the footpath, again, it would feel like you'd extended the settlement, which you would have done, so there'd be more built form. But then you clearly come out and cross an open area before going down Winchester Road to get to Counterstop. So again, I don't think it's going to change your perception of whether you're in one place or another.
And Z564, that's the one that's going to be diverted as part of the Davidson scheme, is that right?
Yes.
So what impact will that have on the current experience?
Well, again, if we have housing on both sides of the path, it will be more built up, but it's not going to change your experience of where you think you are.
No. Okay. All right. Well, can we move then to the second function of Green Wedge, which is guiding development form? And obviously there are a number of aspects to this. I mean, I think when one looks at the Green Wedge study, for example, one of the questions under guide development form is about green networks, which obviously overlaps with some of the things we're going to come to. But first of all, anything you want to say about the existing development form?
Well, it's a bit, it's not clear cut at the moment. You've got a looser arrangement, obviously, of built form along Lutterworth Road. It is denser within the settlement boundary, I accept that, but it's a looser arrangement, and then you've got the area of the business park to the south. There are clear limits. If the appeal site were to come forward, it is contained then by the business park. To the eastern end, the land is more open and extends in a more open sense to the other side of Winchester Road. We thought, as the scheme was being developed, it was important to limit the development there, and hence there's a plan in my appendices that show how that built form could be limited to make sure you have got a decent bit of green infrastructure in the south east.
So that's your appendix 3, isn't it, of your
Yes,
proof?
and that could be conditioned.
Yeah, you stressed that, and I think it was agreed, I think by both Mr. Collins and Mr. Baker Adams, that could be a condition. But that shows an area for green infrastructure only on the eastern side.
That's right.
Yeah, and then the other area would be marked a mix of residential development and green infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right. And my suggestion for doing it that way was that obviously at reserve matters stage, the layout and the design will be refined quite a bit from what's shown here on an illustrative plan. That you don't want to be locked into something that fixes some shape of a big green space within that area, whereas actually might be able to do it in a better form as the design develops. But certainly in the southeast, we just put an absolute, no, there'll be no built development in there at all. So that's why there's a difference between the two areas.
Okay. What then about, obviously, one of the questions that's posed in the Green Wedge assessment when looking at guide development form is to look at green networks. And clearly that's also relevant to function 3, I think, which we're going to come to. But what do you say about this notion of green networks in terms of how it relates to guiding development form here?
I think there's a good opportunity for the green network. Again, I put a plan in, it'd be worth looking at. Yeah, figure 18, appendix 1.
So figure 18 of the proof.
That shows some of the other green spaces that you've got, particularly to the east, Countersthorpe Country Park and Blaby Oaks. And I think a good job has been done here of creating new green spaces and linking them, and even making a consistent signage through from one place to another, that you've got a good network out there to the east of spaces that appear to be very well used, got good well-surfaced paths and good signage and things. And there's the opportunity to link to that. I accept there's no new footpath links being created directly between or anything, but in landscape sometimes use this sort of expression, string of pearls, for creating, you've got links and then wider spaces that different activities can go on, different character maybe. And I think we've got that opportunity here, particularly with the large area of green space to the southeast, that it's sizable enough that you could create something with different character to it, different features that's complementary. You know, if you were going out for a a longer walk around, a dog walk, a jog that you could take part in. And even creating better linkages with the footpath. You know, the one that comes through the site at the moment, you're crossing the golf course, obviously, and the risk of that. But it also has a style at the end. It's not the most accessible and easy to cross unless you're reasonably fit and active. With the appeal scheme, you could have barrier-free access and maybe better surface. And more people could use it as a cut the corner off if you were coming from the north.
Okay.
West.
The northwest, yeah, okay. Now there was some discussion that I had with Mr. Collins about trees. What is the basic position on tree loss, retention and planting on this scheme?
Well, there was an ARB survey done, an assessment by my company, and that's all part of the application. There's no tree reason for refusal. Obviously there would be a loss of trees, particularly in the middle of the site, but the design has been quite carefully worked out to keep the most important ones and the trees around the edges. And in my view, they're the most valuable ones in terms of helping fit the site into its surroundings and to limit any impact of any change on the wider area. I think a comment was made about the sort of overlapping effects of the tree belt. That's not something I recognise here. I know it can be a benefit, particularly if you have a sloping site or something that you're looking across at. But here we're pretty flat, so from the outside area, the internal trees, in my view, don't really make any difference to how you experience that site. It's the perimeter that matters.
Thank you. And then you were talking a moment ago, just to sort of jump back, about the footpath that goes through the appeal site at the moment. Obviously we have a survey on that in Mr. Custon's evidence. What does that tell us about current use?
Well, that tells us that the one that goes through the site, the 56.5, is less well used than the one to the north, the 67.1, and I can understand that. In my visits, I've noticed that the northern one is busier than the one that crosses the path. I've seen people pushing pushchairs along the northern one, etc. You're not going to do that across the golf course, or I wouldn't. So I can understand why that would be the busier of the two. But I think that could change if it was opened up.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then there was some discussion, I think again with Mr. Collins, about whether there would remain a defensible boundary for the green wedge if the development went ahead. And there was a discussion about fixing development format, those kind of topics. Anything you want to say on those?
Well, I think there would be a boundary, and we can follow the form of the plan that I put at my appendix 3. I mean, it would bring development to join with the business park. I see that as all being taken out of any green wedge, but certainly towards the eastern end, it wouldn't be the whole of the appeal site. I think you'd have a clear limit of built development, and it would keep that openness, undeveloped area between Countersthorpe and Blaby.
Okay. Now, if we then turn to the third function, which is provide a green lung into urban areas, there's obviously an overlap here with some of the things we've already been talking about under function 2. But what view do you have on whether that function is met, provide a green lung into the urban areas? And I guess that involves looking at what the situation is now versus what the situation would be if the development were permitted.
Yeah, well, I think it would. Inevitably, some of the site wouldn't be open and green anymore. It would have the houses on it, but at the moment the golf course is private. You've only got access to the footpaths unless you pay to go around the course. Quite a bit more of the land could be opened up as publicly accessible green space. And this is a scheme where, I think 65% of the site would be green infrastructure rather than built form.
Yeah.
And in terms of the features, again, some of the trees would inevitably be lost in the middle, but looking at retaining all the ponds, the perimeter woodlands and trees, and enhancing it all, obviously BNG, there is a requirement to increase the value, and the way that the green space will be designed now is likely to be quite different to how, say, Kempsthorpe Country Park was done, because of the time has moved on and there's now a B&G requirement. You're going to end up with something that's more diverse, probably with more of a mix of different habitats and things, so that you can get the point.
Thank you. And then, I mean, I think obviously function 4, which is provide a recreational resource, we've probably covered that in terms of the things that we've already spoken about. But I was going to just ask you about the Glen Parva permission, which the council granted, so that's CD 13.5, and I discussed this with Mr Baker Adams. I'll probably take it up again with Mr Cusson, but we know, don't we, that there the council granted permission, and they did so on the basis that the scheme was compliant with the requirements for green lung and providing recreational resource. How does that scheme compare to ours in terms of those features around green infrastructure and public resource, so public access, sorry?
Well, I had a bit of a look at this one and realised it was another one that our practice was involved with, not me personally, but it's a smaller site. The green space is about a hectare, I think, or just over, compared to the 10 that we would have here.
Yep.
There is a footpath link down one side. We have a footpath link through the site, so it would link to other areas of green space. But I think the main difference is that in 1 hectare of green space, it can be a positive function. So I'm saying that the decision was wrong. I think it would make a positive contribution, but nothing like what 10 times that area can do, because you've just got so much more opportunity to do different things in a bigger space and to add more positive uses and differences that complement.
So, I mean, obviously Mr Collins made a point, didn't he, in his evidence that he felt the public open space on our site would only be used by the local population, which I think he meant really just people from the appeal scheme itself. What's your view about the likely use for a 10.5 hectares of public open space versus something more like Glen Parva of one hectare?
Well, I think it is more likely to get used. I mean, I think within the middle of Blaby there are not a lot of green spaces or big spaces. There are around the edge, and it can be part of that network if people come out. I've seen lots of people walking dogs and jogging and things like that. I think it's bound to be used by people that come from the... I don't see it as something people are going to drive for the weekend for a trip to see, but, you know, if you lived in Blaby or Kempsthorpe and you're going out for a jog for a few miles, you may well, most likely to go through there and use it, or take the kids to play in one of the playgrounds that might be provided, things like that.
Thank you. And then, could you just give us what your overall conclusion is? I think you've set that out in short terms at paragraph 10.26 of the main proof, but could you just tell us what your overall conclusion is?
Yeah, I think it's 10.26. I said that inevitably there would be a loss of openness within the appeal site itself, but it's been carefully developed to limit any harm to the green wedge purposes. This is my 10.26, my proof. And any effects will be limited and localised. I think the separate identities, Blaby, Whetstone and Kempsthorpe, would be preserved, and no coalescence because of the appeal scheme. I think there's new opportunities for the green lung and recreational facilities, so you could provide a sensitive development.
Thank you very much. Rather shorter than I indicated, but those are my questions. I don't think anyone will criticise me for that, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr Robson, would you like to kick off, or would you like a break? I'm totally open-minded.
Happy to make a start, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Morning, Mr Holliday.
Morning.
I want to start with CS16 just to understand the policy that we're applying. So if you want to get that in front of you, I have it at CD 6.11.
Yeah, I've got that.
And some agreed points from the Statement of Common Ground relating to the policy. It's of course not a landscape designation.
Yes.
And we know, again, agreed in the Statement of Common Ground, that it's not seeking to protect landscape of particular quality or amenity contribution, and therefore it does not consider landscape character, value or features or components.
Yes.
Thank you. And within the policy, and you've been through those 4 bullet points at the top with my learned friend, we also have para 7.16.2 of the justifying text, if you just get that in front of you.
Yes.
And that says in the second sentence, the primary functions are to prevent coalescence of distinct settlements and provide potential as an important recreation resource in areas that are often mainly built up. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And so when we come to interpret and apply CS16, we need to always have in our mind those primary functions, and I want to focus particularly on preventing coalescence of distinct settlements.
Yes.
And that would apply particularly to those first 2 bullet points of the Green Wedge policy, prevent the merging of settlements and guide development form.
Yes.
Because the recreational resource leans more heavily towards bullet points 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we take a similar approach to the 3 specific tests for new development, A, B and C, at the end of the policy, retaining the open and undeveloped character of the Green Wedge leans more heavily towards the preventing of coalescence between the settlements.
It leans more to that than recreation.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's necessarily some overlap, but I'm just understanding how we're going to assess those 2
Yes.
primary functions. Thank you. And I think it's agreed that when we're looking at the preventing of coalescence and how that relates to the tests within the policy, we're looking at 2 elements. One is a perceptual element,
Yes.
what you can see or what you can't see.
Or how you experience it.
Or how you experience it. Yes, I think that's right. What you can see currently, what you can't see currently, how you experience it, and then how it would change with the development.
Yeah.
And there's also, because this is not a landscape policy, a spatial element.
Yes.
And when we're looking at the spatial element, one needs to consider the open and undeveloped character as currently exists and how that would be affected by any proposed development.
Yes, and the character of what's around it and how open and undeveloped that is.
We need to be careful not to stray into looking at landscape character details. As you agreed earlier, they're not something that we're looking at as part of this policy.
No, not landscape character, but I think it's still, you still have to look at what you've actually got, because that's what matters rather than it just, you know, it's not about, is there a green bit of shading on a map and suddenly the buildings that are underneath that become, you don't experience them anymore, they're still there. So it's how it's experienced.
Yes, and the experience point, what is seen and what's not seen, was part of that perceptual assessment.
Yes.
But the spatial assessment is a bit more straightforward, frankly. It's what is the space currently and what will the space be with the development.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I just want to briefly, just so we again know how the policy has been examined as part of the Greenbelt assessment. We know, don't we, that the Greenbelt assessment identifies 3 different parcels within this location, A, B and C.
Yes.
And if you pull it up, the plan itself within the Greenbelt assessment, page 83, it's a plan I think we're all fairly familiar with now.
So what's the core document?
I'm in CD 8.3, which is the Greenbelt assessment. It's paper 82, electronic 83. And it's that plan with A, B and C identified, and then the red hatched areas and the asterisks. You'll definitely recognise it when you get there.
I know the plan.
You know the plan,
I'm trying
yeah.
to get it in front of me, yes, that's right. Yes.
So A, B and C identified there. The site actually on plan falls in part within all three,
Yes.
but we're focused really on parcel B, which is where the site is entirely contained.
Yes.
There is nothing within the Greenbelt assessment that identifies any difference in sensitivity between parcels A, B and C, is there?
Well, it identifies different things in different areas.
Yes, but it doesn't say that the green wedge is more prevalent in A, B or C. It examines them all equally.
They're all green wedge.
I think you've answered my next question, which is nor does the policy identify A, B or C as being any more sensitive than the other or any more important than the other. They are all identified as green wedge.
They're all identified as green wedge. It identifies, for example, in A, that's a sensitive gap between Whetstone and Blaby, and obviously C relates more to Counterstorp and Blaby. So it identifies differences like that, but it doesn't say one of those things is more important than another.
No. Thank you. And the way that the Greenbelt assessment then tests each parcel is through asking a series of questions.
Yes.
Relating to each of the functions of the policy. And you've done the same thing. You applied those same questions yourself in your Appendix 2.
Yes.
So you're not saying that the methodology is in some way
No, I'm not saying the methodology is
incapable
wrong. I
of
mean,
assessing.
it's one way of looking at things.
Yes, and it's one
a
you've applied.
specific policy. That's the way they've done it. So the sensible thing for me was to use the same things.
And if you look in parcel B, it's probably just worth just getting that on your screen because we'll come back to it throughout. But I just want to look at how it's looked at the spatial part of preventing coalescence. And if we look at guide development form, the first question is, does the land contribute to maintaining the open and undeveloped character of the land? Do you see that?
Yes.
Purpose 2, question A, sorry. Does the land contribute to maintaining the open and undeveloped character of the land?
Yes.
And so again, when we're thinking about the spatial element, is the land currently open and undeveloped? Would it remain open and undeveloped with the proposal in place?
The appeal site itself wouldn't all be open and undeveloped. It would have some houses on it.
Yes. The policy then, last point in terms of how the policy is worded and how we're going to apply it. And then I just want to look at the exclusion of appropriate land uses. Third paragraph up from the end of the policy.
Sorry, where I'm lost. Where
Sorry, no, that's fine. CS 6.11, the policy itself.
Oh, right. So 6 point.
CD 6.11.
Yeah. And whereabouts?
Third paragraph up from the bottom of the policy, uses that are appropriately located in green wedges.
Yes.
So the policy specifically excludes or identifies appropriate land uses and associated development that is small in scale, doesn't it?
It does.
And that would include, we see, outdoor recreation.
Yes.
And outdoor recreation would mean the golf course as an outdoor recreational facility.
The golf course itself is, yeah.
And the rugby pitch on the west side of Lutterworth Road.
The rugby pitches. Yeah.
Yes. Now, if one was taking a appropriate land use such as a golf course, one would expect to enable its use some parking.
Yes.
One would expect a clubhouse.
Yes.
And indeed, as Mr Smith identifies in his evidence, as being a critical factor, one might expect a driving range.
Perhaps.
So I think I know where the point of difference is between us on this. You say the buildings are too big and therefore not small in scale, but in terms of the presence of those buildings per se, they would be appropriate within the green wedge.
Well, that's probably one more for Mr Cousins and me. I mean, it's not a driving range for a start, is it? I'm sure some of those other uses that are on the site seem to me, not as a planner, but to be beyond what's described in there. And I think even the clubhouse at the rugby club is quite big compared to the pitch that's next to it. So again, whether that counts as small in scale. I noted that the officers obviously thought it was against green wedge policy. But these are matters of degrees and judgment.
But in terms of the principle, and this is going to come back to the experience point, the land use itself as a golf course or the rugby pitch is acceptable,
yes.
And the policy anticipates that one would appreciate them within
Yes.
the green wedge area. It also appreciates that you can have some associated built infrastructure with them, and I think, I'll put it to you again, you agree in principle that a car park, a clubhouse, rugby or golf, potentially the driving range buildings which would accompany the golf course, would form part of what one would reasonably expect
Yes.
to be attached to those uses. Yes. The difference is, you say they're not small scale, and
On those two sites, and my other point is that it's the other uses down Lutterworth Road that, I mean, garden centre specifically excluded, some of those other businesses that are down that road that give it a built form. That's my point, that they are in the green wedge, but they're not appropriate uses according to the policy, and that's how that character is, how the area is experienced.
yes, and
We don't want
we'll
to
come
use
to
the word
those. But
character.
I just want to look at that part of Lutterworth Road,
Yes.
where we have the golf course, the buildings on one side, the rugby pitch and the clubhouse on the other side. Use is acceptable. Buildings in principle to be anticipated as part of the experiences. Dispute is about the size of
I
those
would
buildings.
expect some buildings, the scale of them is a discussion matter.
Yeah, thank you. The term open and undeveloped character, again, I think you've agreed this already, would mean the absence of built form generally and in the context of those acceptable land uses.
That's what I would understand it. I mean, this is a green wedge, it's not green belt, but I think it's following the same kind of principles in terms of openness.
Very good. I'm glad we can agree that. And therefore, remembering that a golf course and a rugby pitch are acceptable land uses in the green wedge, features such as them being managed, and by that mean mown, tended to, looked after, is not relevant to assessing the open and undeveloped character, is it?
No.
The fact that they are engineered as a feature or landscape character is also not relevant to determining whether they're open and undeveloped.
No, it's not. That all those points, I think, are more relevant just to the bigger planning judgment of whether it's an appropriate site. If land for housing has to be found, compared to more traditional countryside, but it's nothing to do with the green wedge policy.
Yes, and that's the key point, isn't it? Because your evidence relates to the green wedge policy, and that's the only policy that's in dispute between us.
Yes, it is.
There's no landscape or visual reason for refusal. And so we're looking at how we assess the words of this policy in terms of open and undeveloped character. So managed irrelevant, engineered as a feature or landscape character irrelevant. An urbanising feature, if a golf course use and a rugby course use and the buildings that one would anticipate with those use are acceptable, whether they're urbanising or not is irrelevant to looking at open and undeveloped character of the green belt, isn't it? Sorry, green wedge. I slipped myself in.
In terms of green wedge, recreational use is acceptable use. Some associated buildings I would expect with them.
Yes, so whether they are to be considered urbanising features or not, they are not relevant to determining whether the land is open and undeveloped for the purposes of the green wedge policy.
Well, I think in terms of the buildings, the scale of them is a factor, and that is part of that judgment.
Thank you. And you referred in your written evidence and I think referenced it in Chief, the fact that it's not farmland is also irrelevant, isn't it?
To the green wedge point, yes.
Thank you. And therefore, when we look at the golf course and the rugby pitch for the purpose of green wedge, it is to be considered as an open and undeveloped part of that green wedge.
Yes.
In fairness to you, and you've repeated it again today, you say in your proof, and we can go to it at 10.26, which is the point the page my learned friend took you to. Which is on just the last paragraph of your proof, page 40, paper 42.
Yes, I've got that.
There would be an inevitable loss of openness within the appeal site itself, and this relates to you're putting built form in an open and undeveloped land.
It does.
And you say, repeat the point in your earlier landscape statement, CD 5.15. I don't know if we need to go there, but there you conclude, in the areas where the housing would be built, the land itself would obviously not remain open and undeveloped.
Yes.
And in your oral evidence, in response to my learned friend, you said there would be a high degree of change once the built form is in place.
Yes.
And again,
where the built form actually goes, obviously.
Yes, and we'll have a discussion about it.
Or open it, have a house on it, so it's a different thing altogether.
Blindingly obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, in the statement of common ground, there's agreed that there will be some harm into the function of the green wedge linked to the loss of the open and undeveloped land of the golf course.
Yes.
And so that harm, going back through the answers which you gave earlier in terms of how we look at spatial and perceptual, you're accepting that then that there is a harm to the spatial element of the green wedge policy.
Yes, that there will be a loss of openness where the built form goes.
And that spatial element of the green wedge relates to, or is part of, how one looks at the separation of Blaby and Whetstone along the Lutterworth Road
Well,
connection.
I think the perception is the more important factor in that respect.
Well, you think perception is more important, and we are going to definitely address that. But you accept, don't you, that the spatial element along Lutterworth Road, there is a spatial element of the separation between Blaby and Whetstone.
Well, I don't think that's the bit of land that provides the separation between Blaby and Whetstone, because there's already built development the other side of the road.
So is your point, and I think maybe this is where then it overlaps with your perception argument. Is your point that there is no separation anymore between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road?
No, I don't think there is really. I think the separation comes to the west of the built form along Lutterworth Road.
And so your point then, presumably, is that in this location the policy has already failed. CS16 is no longer operating because it's providing no separation spatially or perceptually.
Well, I think there is separation. I think the separation comes along the bypass corridor and the open land alongside it.
Let's put the bypass to one side. We can agree there's a clear area of separation that runs along the bypass within Parcel A. It's evident on plan. I drove down it yesterday, the inspector's driven down it a number of times. There is a sense of separation that exists down the bypass. But the green wedge policy applies down Lutterworth Road as well, doesn't it?
It does.
And the green belt, green wedge assessment applies within parcel A as it does to parcel B.
It does.
And it identifies that through the Green Wedge assessment that the separation between Lutterworth and Whetstone is also evident down that Lutterworth Road stretch on which the appeal site sits. The Green Wedge assessment concludes, and if you wanted to,
yeah, let's have a look at it.
To go there,
Is this parcel A or parcel B?
if we look at parcel B, page 36, paper 37, PDF.
Sorry, paper.
So paper 36,
Yeah.
and it's the concluding remarks. You there?
Yeah, it says along the Lutterworth Road, doesn't it?
Well, it says the parcel of Green Wedge provides for a clear separation between Blaby, Whetstone and Countersthorpe. So just pausing there, we're not looking at Blaby and Countersthorpe. I want to focus on Blaby and Whetstone. It then says, most importantly, between Blaby and Whetstone along the Lutterworth Road. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
So the Green Wedge assessment concludes that the area of separation is most important along the Lutterworth Road. Is your point that that's completely changed and gone now?
Between Blaby and Whetstone along the Lutterworth Road, I mean, that, I read that to be the stuff west of Lutterworth Road, but I think things have changed. Well, I don't know exactly what's changed, but certainly the rugby club has been expanded, the houses have gone in there. I think that was happening at the time this was written. Whether it was on the ground, I'm not sure. But the other uses that are down there, to me, are urban uses, and I think the open land to the back, the rugby pitch itself, but that's, in my view, where any separation is. It's to the west of Lutterworth Road, not to the east.
So when you stay within that part of the Green Wedge assessment, the assessment itself doesn't say any distinction between east and west, does it?
No, but it says Lutterworth Road.
And we're in parcel B, which includes both east and west of Lutterworth Road.
Yeah, and parcel B includes Winchester Road. I mean, it would say between Whetstone and Winchester Road, if it wanted to include the appeal site.
I want to concentrate on what it actually says, which is it's most important between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road.
Yes.
So it makes no distinction, does it, between east and west? That's your distinction.
No, it doesn't.
So is your case then that there is no longer any separation between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road because of the development on the western side?
My case, my view is that as you go along Lutterworth Road, you do not feel that that's part of any gap between Whetstone and Blaby. You feel that you are already in Blaby. The land west of Lutterworth Road beyond the built form, I think, forms part of that space, the gap that provides the separation and the difference between identities. But I don't think you travel along Lutterworth Road and, just picking an example, once you get past the garden centre, suddenly you've gone from Whetstone into Blaby. I think your point of going from one place to the other is the roundabout. That's your experience. I accept that the built form isn't as solid and dense as the area to the north of the housing at Westfield Close, etc. But it still has a more built-up character, feel, form to me than, you know, for example, the stuff south of the roundabout and the business park. But yeah, my view comes mainly from the point of view of perception rather than thinking of it as a map-based exercise.
So when you make your overall conclusion, if we look in your proof 10.17,
Yes?
paper 38, and it goes on to paper 39, in relation to preventing the merging of settlements. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
And it's the final sentence that starts on 38. At the southern end of the green wedge in this area near the Chamleys Garden Centre, the perception of separation is reduced owing to the extent of existing built development between Lutterworth Road and the A426. But any development on the appeal site would make no difference whatever to the physical separation or perception of separation at this point. So I'm still trying to pinpoint exactly what you're saying in terms of what is the current baseline in this area. Are you saying that as soon as you're at the roundabout, because of the built development, and that's the reference there to at this point, you think you've got into Blaby at the roundabout, and anything that happens north of that roundabout now doesn't matter?
Broadly, that once you've got past the roundabout, you feel that you're in Blaby. You feel the built form has started at that point. Yes, there are more open bits, such as the rugby pitch. I think if I was to draw the boundary of the green wedge now, I would probably draw it hard up against the back of the built form, along the western edge of Lutterworth Road. Would be my view. I know it is in the green wedge, but I think the more appropriate boundary, if it was looked at again, would be tight up against there. And it might come in and out a bit, so yes, at the rugby pitch you probably draw it along Lutterworth Road.
And you can say, and looking at your main points of conclusion, we've looked at 10.17. If we go into 10.18, you say when approaching Blaby from the south along Lutterworth Road from the A426, so we're now leaving the roundabout and going up the stretch from the roundabout towards, past the golf course, past the rugby pitch, towards where the Davidson scheme and the existing settlement edge. There is already almost continuous built development on both sides of Lutterworth Road. And that's key to your conclusion, isn't it? That there's a sense of built form on either side. Yeah. And it's a sense of built form on either side that's important to your conclusion.
Yes, it's the amount of built development and it's both sides of the road.
And you go on in 10.19 to look at Winchester Road. And you say, to the west of Winchester Road, the appeal site is bounded by mature hedgerows and trees, restricting visibility of the site. Mature planting does provide a green break between the housing on the southern edge of Blaby and the northern edge of Countersthorpe. And this would be retained, and much of the land west of Winchester Road would be designed as green infrastructure with new planting and green space, with only the pedestrian access being provided, which would reduce the loss of roadside vegetation to an absolute minimum. And your overall conclusion is that the changes brought about by the appeal scheme would make a negligible difference to the perception of merging or their separate identities. Do you see that?
Yes.
And so when you're then looking on the other side, at Winchester Road, the key components which you say result in a negligible difference is the mature hedgerows.
Yes.
Is the limited visibility into the site.
Yes, into the site and to the existing settlement beyond it.
And removing roadside vegetation, which would be limited.
Yes.
So the fact that you've got mature hedgerows with limited views into the site along Winchester Road reinforce a sense of separation on that side between Blaby and Countersthorpe.
Yes, it does. And it all helps contribute. So if you're coming from Countersthorpe north, you don't see much at all of Blaby or the houses in it, because there's a greater distance than there is along Lutterworth Road, but there is that, the tall planting, the open land to the east, so you don't notice the housing at the other end so much, whereas you come up Lutterworth Road, and even if we're just talking about the western side of Lutterworth Road, there isn't a lot of planting or softening or anything like that. You look across past one bit of built development to the next, you're soon looking towards Westfield Close, even just from north of the roundabout. So there is a much more connected feel along that road than there is along Winchester Road.
Yes, I mean, it's a shorter distance, isn't it? The separation between the roundabout and...
But there's a lot more built form already in it.
Yeah, so just so we talk about the same thing, on Lutterworth Road, between the roundabout and, let's be fair, the rugby development housing and the Davidson scheme, which also should form part of the baseline, is a shorter distance than the area of separation between the edge of Blaby and the edge of Countersthorpe down Winchester Road. Right. Now, thinking back to the conclusion in the Greenbelt assessment, which was that the green wedge providing a clear separation between Blaby, Whetstone and Countersthorpe, most importantly between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road, and it maintains a separation between Blaby and Countersthorpe along Winchester Road. The Greenbelt assessment identifies it as being most important along Lutterworth Road more than the separation along Winchester Road. It's clear from the wording of the text. Yes?
That's what the text says.
Now, it's reasonable, therefore, as well, isn't it, to think that it's most important because of two things. One, it's a shorter distance.
I don't know what their reasons are.
And another would be that it's already under a degree of pressure.
Possibly.
Because we know, don't we, that the Greenbelt assessment was undertaken post the garden centre being in place. That was already there when they did the Greenbelt assessment. Yes?
Yeah, I think the garden centre would have been in place.
And the consent was already in place for the rugby pitch and the housing and the golf and the changing rooms for the rugby pitch.
Yeah.
So the Greenbelt assessors were aware, weren't they, at that time, of the pressure that was already in place along the line of separation along Lutterworth Road?
Well, they'd be aware of what the situation was at the time they wrote it.
And therefore, when saying which is more important, the gap between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road or the gap between Blaby and Countersthorpe along Winchester Road, those will have played a part in identifying the most important area of separation as Lutterworth Road.
Possibly.
Well, what else would it be to identify the gap as being most important along Lutterworth Road more so than Winchester Road, if it wasn't those factors?
Well, the gap is obviously between Blaby and Whetstone is a much narrower space than it is between Countersthorpe and Blaby. And you look at the parcel A assessment and it talks about the most sensitive part and things, and then it's talking about the gap between Blaby and Whetstone, which is very narrow in places. So I assume that's why that corridor is assumed to be more vulnerable.
Yes, and under development pressure because of the garden centre, the rugby club, the housing scheme associated with the rugby club.
Well, possibly, but I think it's mainly because that part of the wedge is the narrow part west of Lutterworth Road.
So I'm going to move on to looking at the baseline positions with reference to some of the viewpoints. That's probably going to take me more than 10 minutes. So I'm just wondering if now's the time for a comfort break. Yes, absolutely. It just makes more sense than we can do it in one sensible, hopefully a rundown, but we'll see, Lutterworth Road and Winchester Road.
Okay, should we break for 15 minutes? Okay, so 11:05 and inquiry is resumed. Mr. Robson.
Just making sure you stay on the screen, Mr.
Yeah,
Holiday, but you
pressed
are.
it
It is on you. I'm not seeking the limelight. I want to look at baseline now, so I think if you could have your proof and your appendices open. Have you got them
I've
on
got the
paper
hard
so you can have them?
copies.
Ah, brilliant, so you can have them both open at the same time. And I want to start at viewpoint B down Winchester Road, please.
Yes, I've got that.
And we can see in the viewpoint, and again, hopefully we can be relatively quick because the inspector's driven the roads. You can see, can't you, as you leave Blaby and drive towards Countersthorpe, you can always see Countersthorpe in the distance, the built form.
Yes, you can just see it along the road.
And we see the appeal site as annotated to the right-hand side of that photo, and it's annotated as appeal site behind the trees.
Yes.
And your conclusion in power 8.29 of your proof, the final sentence of that paragraph, first let's take the paragraph. You identify the mature trees and tall hedgerows to the east of Winchester Road that forms the appeal site boundary, the small gap that we've already touched upon. And from this location, the edge of Countersthorpe can just be seen, as discussed, and the conclusion is that the green edge to the highway at this location does provide a sense of separation, supporting the separate identities of the settlement. That's
yes.
your conclusion. And that is for these reasons, isn't it? Firstly, there's no visible development through or over the trees behind the appeal site.
Yes.
And nor will there be, broadly.
No.
I think you
Yes.
said, in chief, you said in winter you might see some roof lines. But
Glimpse of roof or something, yes.
I'm not going to argue with you over that. And so it is that highway planting, those hedgerows and the lack of development that reinforces the sense of separation that the appeal site form operates in this location.
Yes. Yeah, and the land obviously at the other side of the road.
Yes. And if we look at the Greenbelt assessment, and I think for the first time in this inquiry, look at parcel C, just to see how you accord there with the way that the GBA looks at this route, and it's purpose 1, question B, so CD 8.3, page 38 PDF, 37 electronic. Do you have that?
I've got the hard copy, yes.
Great. And it's question B, are there features that provide a visual perception of distance between settlements? The first paragraph's relating to the left-hand side of that photo, so to the west, and the second is on the west side of the parcel adjacent to Winchester Road. There's a strong, thick hedgerow fronting Winchester Road that serves to block the view of the fields beyond this part into the green wedge, whilst this strong hedgerow with no significant level of development seen beyond it is considered a feature that provides for a visual perception of distance between the settlements. It should be noted that along this entire stretch of Winchester Road, Blaby and Countersthorpe, views of Blaby and Countersthorpe are possible. So your conclusion is consistent there with the GBA. And again, it's a recognition that you can see development.
Yes.
But the fact you've got this mature hedgerow that blocks view into the green wedge at this location reinforces separation between the two.
Yes, and the development you see is pretty small element of it, small part of any view.
So moving down then to viewpoint C, slightly further down now Winchester Road and looking back towards Blaby.
Yes.
So in the photo there, we can see, you know, annotate the housing at Skipper's Close, Blaby, so you're aware that you're approaching Blaby.
Yes.
But that on the left we again see the thick hedgerows that would prevent views of any development into the site or into the green wedge there.
Yes.
And I just want to look at the welcome to Blaby sign. Your paragraph 8.30 in your proof
got that.
Views north along Winchester Road, partway between Blaby and Councilthorpe. Developments on the southern edge of Blaby can be seen with the Welcome to Blaby sign. The appeal site lies west of the roadside hedgerow. Any built developments on the site will be north of the sign, but barely visible due to the extensive planting along the site boundary. You've got those conclusions?
Yes.
So again, the sense of separation reinforced by the boundary planting, by the roadside verge.
It is.
And it's not your case, or it's certainly not your written case here, that the Welcome to Blaby sign indicates that anything that runs counter to that sense of separation.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that
You
question.
draw attention to the Welcome to Blaby sign
Yes.
in this location,
Yes.
but you're not making the point to say that that reduces any sense of separation at this location.
No, I don't think it reduces the sense of separation. It's a signal to that you're entering Blaby. And when I mentioned even in chief, road signs, they are an indicator, I think, of place where you are. I don't get too hung up on exactly where they sit on the ground, because I understand for many practical reasons they might be forward or backward of, I don't think that's an indicator of the development line or anything like that, but it is an indicator of how you feel like you've got from one place to another.
I think that's a very, you can see where the questions are going. I think that's a very fair answer, because when we're talking about perception, about experience, it's how the user takes into account of a number of factors they're presented with. And the Welcome to Blaby sign, I think you've just agreed, is not a sign that Blaby starts at the sign.
No.
It is that you are approaching Blaby.
Yes.
And in this location, you balance that sign against, as you've pointed out, the thick hedgerow, the fact that it's reinforcing separation.
Yes.
And that thick hedgerow outweighs the fact you've seen a sign that says Welcome to Blaby.
Well, the hedgerow's one thing. You see Blaby ahead of you. You see the built development looking along the road. What you don't see is the existing houses to the west, beyond the golf course, because the planting obviously screens that.
Thank you. Viewpoint D. Now, again, Winchester Road. This is the view into, I think it's the farmland, isn't it, which is referenced in the Greenbelt assessment as being more open.
Yes, I imagine so. Willow Farm.
And again, open and undeveloped land because there's no built form on the site.
Yes.
And finally, viewpoint E.
Yes.
So I've taken these slightly out of sequence. So you've gone on a very strange walk down Winchester Road. You've held halfway down, double back, gone back again and turned around and come back the other way. So forgive me taking a slightly erratic route, but I followed your A, B, C, D and E.
It could have been set out differently.
So you can now quite visibly see the built forms of Countesthorpe, the housing on the left-hand side. Still on the other side of the road, on the appeal site side, the thick hedgerows preventing views into that part of the green wedge.
Yes, from that particular viewpoint.
And therefore, again, thinking about the experience and the perception, you're aware, because there's a sign and you can see built form in the distance, that you are approaching the separate settlements of Countesthorpe. Yes?
Yes, well, I think at this point you are virtually there. That's how you...
But when you're balancing those effects, and you've still got the thick hedgerow to your right-hand side, where the appeal site
the photograph was to indicate the entrance to Countesthorpe, effectively. Yeah, we slightly set back from it, but it's yes.
Again, I think that's fair because it's a longer stretch along Winchester Road. Factors strengthen and weaken as you go down that extent, don't they? So,
Yes.
as we looked at the start, where you are looking at Countesthorpe much in the distance, with a strong thick hedgerow on the right-hand side, you have that sense of perception by the hedgerow. And Countesthorpe is less of the experience. Yes?
Yes, and as you get closer to it, it's obviously more of it.
But it doesn't diminish the fact that the hedgerow is still forming, is still part of that sense of separation. It still plays a role. It is just beginning to be outweighed by the fact that you are getting closer to Countesthorpe.
Yes, I think at this point you realise you've reached Countesthorpe, you see the sign, you see the houses, you think you've got there.
So I want to look now at Lutterworth Road. And we had your answers earlier, which went back to your overall conclusion at 10.18, just before we get into the looking at the viewpoints. That when you're approaching south along Lutterworth Road, there is already almost continuous built development on both sides of Lutterworth Road, including the built form, such that users of the route already feel as if they're within Blaby before reaching the site.
Yes.
And so we're now looking for how is that experienced along that stretch from the roundabout through to the Davidson scheme and the
Yes.
Rugby Club scheme. Before we look at the photographs, could we look at your Appendix 2, please?
Yeah, got that.
And it's your response to Purpose 1, Question B. Are there features that provide a visual perception of distance between settlements?
Yes.
And looking at the green belt, I'm going to stop making that slip at some point. The green wedge assessment, your fourth column is a direct quote, isn't it, from the green wedge assessment conclusions?
Yes.
And we note when looking at the GWA response, in the northern part of the parcel along Lutterworth Road, north of the A426 roundabout, so just pausing there, that's the stretch we're looking at for your viewpoints. Yes?
Yes.
There is some development on the eastern side, but the development is set back from the road. So the development on the eastern side would be business park,
Yes.
golf course.
Yes.
For the most part, and views of it are limited by thick, strong hedgerows, these hedgerows provide a visual perception of distance between the settlements. You see that as the green wedge assessment conclusion.
I do.
And then your site assessment. Your first paragraph that starts with yes, the mature planting around the boundary of the appeal site helps to provide the perception of separation. Additional planting is proposed at the western end of the appeal site, which will further assist along Winchester Road. There will be few open views to the appeal site from Winchester Road. That's your first paragraph. Just so I can understand your response. The second part of that paragraph relating to Winchester Road. Is your reference at the start of that paragraph to the mature planting around the boundary of the appeal site, which helps to provide the perception of separation? Is that also a reference to Winchester Road? Or is that to the site as a whole?
Well, I don't make it clear, do I? I mean, I think it certainly applies at Winchester Road. I don't think it separates Blaby from Whetstone. And I think things, well, obviously things have changed from when that the green wedge assessment was written. The business park's obviously become more developed since then, and I think things will have changed from when that was written.
The business park's become more developed since the green wedge assessment, that's right. But its development has not brought it closer to Lutterworth Road, has it? That's remained exactly the same.
I don't know where the ages of the different buildings. Some of it may be closer to Lutterworth Road.
Your second paragraph on Lutterworth Road, there are some more open views west across the green wedge, south of the appeal site. Just pausing there, that's south of the roundabout, I think, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is really.
And then you say, but not across the appeal site itself, which is more visually enclosed.
Yes.
So the reference to the appeal site being more visually enclosed must be reference to quote the green wedge assessment, the thick, strong hedgerows that are in front of the appeal site along the golf course boundary.
Yes, I mean the biggest, strongest ones are on Winchester Road rather than Lutterworth Road.
That's not the question. You're talking about Lutterworth Road here.
Oh, sorry.
So when you reference the site being more visually enclosed, you'll agree with me that that is a reference to
Yes, it is.
the strong, thick hedgerows identified in the green wedge assessment.
Well, it's what I'm saying is it's more visually enclosed than the stuff to the south. There are hedgerows obviously along the edge of the golf course site on Lutterworth Road, but they're not as big as strong as the ones on Winchester Road. And you can see that on site.
Let's put it the same way. Let's see if you agree just with the green wedge assessment then. Do you agree with the green wedge assessment when it says that the development is set back from the road for the most part and views of it are limited by thick, strong hedgerows?
I think in part it's quite mixed down there. Certainly the development, say at the business park, that might have been the case 10 years ago. I don't think it applies now, but I don't know what it was like 10 years ago. The development on the golf course, the built form, because it's set back behind the car park and it's single story effectively, then you don't notice that behind the hedgerow. But the hedgerow isn't as big and strong a landscape feature as it is on the Winchester Road. You notice it essentially from the site entrance.
Yes, so you notice the golf course from the site entrance. In terms then of how we're looking at the appeal site and how it contributes to the sense or the perception of separation, we can't see the golf course, and we can look at that in the photos. You can't see the golf course buildings. As you travel down Lutterworth Road, apart from when you're directly opposite the entrance to the business park, is it possible to see the business park buildings?
Yes, you can see them from places because some of them are quite tall and you see them over the top of hedges, etc. You can see them from the car park and the golf course on the entrance.
So in terms then of where you start to deviate from the green wedge assessment, some perhaps inconsequential about whether they're thick, strong hedgerows, you agree the golf course can't be seen, you do think that the business park has some visibility, but presumably you disagree that the hedgerows provide a visual perception of distance between the settlements, because your evidence earlier was that it doesn't form that function anymore.
On Lutterworth Road?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think they provide a sense of separation between Blaby and Whetstone because you haven't got that perception of a gap between Blaby and Whetstone. It may be the case if there was nothing to the west of Lutterworth Road and some open land that swept through that there would be some sense of distance, but I don't think you have that because you're not feeling you've got that gap anyway because of what's on the other side of the road.
So could we go to your viewpoints then, please? And again, I think it would help you to have your proof open as well so that we can see your narrative assessment. And I want to start with viewpoint P, figure 17.
Yes, got that.
And your narrative assessment of it is paragraph 8.43.
Yes.
Starting first with the photo itself. So you can see where the cars are coming onto the roundabout. That's the bypass, that takes you into parcel A. And the sense of separation that we acknowledge exists
Yes.
down that corridor.
Yes.
What we're focused on is the arm that goes to the right-hand side of the photograph, and that's Lutterworth Road, and any sense of separation down there.
Yes.
Okay. And what we have in that view is the roof of the kitchen shop. That was it. I couldn't remember what it was. I was going to say garden centre, but it's the kitchen shop.
The kitchen building in the
builder's
garden centre
kitchen
site.
That's a single-storey building, isn't it?
It is.
And clearly the gable view is visible there over the roundabout.
Yes.
Over the top of the hedgerows round the roundabout. There is down the western side as you look down Lutterworth Road, and again the inspector will appreciate this on site, but you can see in the far distance the housing of the rugby club.
Yes.
Broadly comparable with part of the journey down Winchester Road as you're approaching Cantersthorpe, when you have housing in the middle distance.
Well, I think the difference here is that you also have got things in between.
Well,
so it's not an undeveloped stretch of road. It's got quite a bit going on before you get there, and it's that overlapping of things that you perceive that is the difference, in my view.
Yes, but let's not look at it on plan. Let's look at what the photo shows us.
Yeah.
And as you look up the up Lutterworth Road and to the east of Lutterworth Road there is some signage, but you can't see any built form.
Well, you can see the other roof, which is probably the other garden centre building, I suspect.
To the east of Lutterworth Road.
Yeah, and you see the signage, the entrance to the business park, and yeah, the signage.
But in terms of built form, down the east of Lutterworth Road there,
well,
there's
it's those
non-visible.
things we've just described. So it's not solid, but you can see the layering and perceive the layering of the different bits of built form.
Can you see any built form to the east of Lutterworth Road from this location?
Yeah, you see those two roofs.
To the east?
Oh, to the east? No, you don't. You just see the sign that's the entrance to the business park.
And so, again, trying to think about this in a sensible way, it's how one experiences it and factors in the different contributing elements to a particular view.
Yes.
And the sign is certainly an indicator that there is something coming up. That's why you put a sign there.
Yes.
But at this stage, not visible. So its weight within how one perceives this view is less than if you could see the built form.
It is. I mean, if you'd, as suggested by the council team, driven round the roundabout, you would have already seen the built form at the business park as you come to this point. This photograph's taken from the footpath, so I didn't get mown down when I took the photograph. But that means you don't get to see the buildings in the same way that you probably would if you were on the road.
And we're trying to build a picture that the inspector will then apply when inevitably he goes on site himself.
Yes. These are just aids to refresh the memory, but I totally agree. It's the whole experience, it's the movement along that corridor that matters rather than individual snapshot photographs.
And in terms of key factors that we also see in this photo, there is to the east of Lutterworth Road a heavily treed and hedge road boundary.
There is in this particular view, yes.
Which when looking at Winchester Road was a factor which led to a sense of separation. And so
Yeah.
the same can be said here.
Well, I don't think you experience this the same, but it has got hedges still.
As you go further down Lutterworth Road, looking at it from, sorry, it's not further down, in fact, it's looking at it from a different angle in viewpoint N.
M for mother.
No,
N for...
N for Norman.
Yes.
I can't remember what N is in the phonetic alphabet.
Yes.
November.
November.
There we go.
Feels like November, that's it.
It does, yes, yeah, which is appropriate given the conditions outside. So we're now looking from across the other side of the dual carriageway. We're in parcel A, looking back towards
Yes.
parcel B. And we can see there the rooftop of the commercial building,
Yeah.
which I think is the kitchen showroom, kitchen
No,
fabricators.
so I think the commercial building's the surveyors.
Ah, the surveyors,
Which
yes, and then the
which
rugby
thinking
club.
back to the previous photograph, I think was the other roof we saw rather than the garden centre.
Yes. So you can see the surveyors, and you can see to the left the
The kitchen
back of the
building.
changing rooms of the rugby club.
And the rugby club that's got, the solar panels on it.
And the fact that you can see built form over the hedgerows in this location, you say has the effect of reducing the sense of separation.
Yes.
Viewpoint K.
Yes.
So we're now at onto Lutterworth Road, and we've got the business park behind.
Yes.
And so, briefly, the Welcome to Blaby sign, an indicator, but not saying that the built form of Blaby should come up to the sign.
I don't think it tallies with where the built form is. There's built form further south of that sign as well.
And you're not saying that we should anticipate built form all the way up to the sign, because the
No,
sign,
I'm not saying
because
the
the sign is there.
is a definitive thing in itself of where
Very
it's
good.
located.
Excellent. We can't at this location see the golf course or the golf course buildings.
You can't see the building. You can see the sign that's the entrance to the golf course.
We can see the sign, and we remember, of course, that the golf course is an acceptable use in a green wedge location.
Yeah, although I think the sign gives away a lot of uses that are not acceptable uses.
And therefore, in policy terms, a sign to an appropriate use in the green wedge doesn't indicate anything, does it?
Well, it indicates there's a lot of different businesses in there, which is not quite the same as an isolated clubhouse in the countryside.
Right, so the point of distinction between us is that because there are other uses now on that sign, your perception of the green wedge completely changes, because it's not just a golf course. Is that your point?
No, my point is all these things add up together to your understanding of place. And do you feel here that you're in a bit of countryside, for lack of a better word, that just happens to have a few sporadic uses in it, including like a golf course and clubhouse, or do you feel like you've already reached a settlement and you're part of it with all that's going on around it? And that's my view, that you've got all these other things to the west of Lutterworth Road, and even on the golf course itself, the fact that there's a sign with half a dozen different activities going on in there, it feels more of a part of the settlement.
We do need to find a better word than countryside, though, don't we? Because we're not considering the character of the land in a landscape and visual terms.
No,
It is
but
about separation
we-
between settlements.
Yeah, the separation between settlements. So it's, are we in Weston, are we in Blaby, or are we in a bit of no man's land, if we want to call it that, instead of countryside in between the two? And I don't think we own no man's land. I think it feels like we're in Blaby by this point.
But the way that we described it as we were looking down Winchester Road, it's are we approaching the edge of the residential area or not? And so,
Well,
yes, the
what
indicators
the
on the west.
photograph doesn't show, but
if
if
you wait for
you're
the question, it's slightly easier.
Sorry?
If you wait for the question, it's slightly easier.
All right.
There's the built form on the west of the Lutterworth Road, which we've discussed previously. But when the user looks at what is on the east of Lutterworth Road, there is dense hedgerow, there is an absence of built form, and there is a sign predominantly indicating access to an acceptable edge of settlement use, isn't there?
There's a sign to one activity that's acceptable in terms of policy, and other activities that are not. But also what's not shown on the photograph, but if you were there on the ground and turned your head, is the house that's next to the sign. I think it's part of the garden centre sign. And then we've got the commercial uses, the rugby club buildings, they're not on this photograph because it's quite a narrow view, but on the ground your experience is different and wider.
Which is a perfectly, I'm not asking the inspector to go to site and focus exactly down the road. He's obviously going to turn his head one way or the other to form his view of the experience. But if the inspector, and I think we agreed earlier, but if the inspector accepts the approach in the green wedge assessment and Mr. Collins's evidence that this is an important area of separation between Blaby and Whetstone, then those built forms that we see to the west, so the rugby club, the housing, are pressures upon that area of separation, aren't they?
Well, the things
Rather
that,
than
the
indicators
things that
of
are there,
allowing more development.
I'm not saying they're a justification for allowing more development, but they're part of the baseline situation in terms of looking to the actual function of the green wedge, and does it provide separation between settlements. I think they're all factors that have to be considered, because you have to think, well, where is the settlement? What does it feel like I'm actually in here? And this is the big difference between Mr. College and myself. In my view, you feel like you're already in Blaby, in which case it's not going to make any difference to your perception of Blaby and Whetstone, because this combination of other factors come together to make you feel that that's where you already are, and so it's not going to change that. I think any gap as such lies to the west of Lutterworth Road and probably tightly drawn around the built form that's there. And that's the difference between us, and I think it's a judgment that the inspector's going to come to.
When we come to the basis for your conclusion that we looked at previously, we've now looked at the photographs, and your conclusion that there is almost continuous development along Lutterworth Road. In fact, when you look at the experience on the ground, it's not experienced as almost continuous built development, particularly on the appeal site side, is it?
On the appeal site, there's obviously...
Appeal site side, so as you take that walk
Side.
as we've gone down, so on the east of Lutterworth Road, the hedgerow, the absence of built form visible.
Well, the absence of built form is just the appeal site, because you've got to the south of it, you've got the business park, part of the golf course, and land north of it is going to be the Davidson site. There isn't anything else. Or not to the north of the business park anyway. It is more open and feels more open to the south of the business park.
How we look at this feeling more open to the south, yes, it's more open to the south because you can see more into the green wedge. We've spoken about the visibility into the appeal site and into the part of the green wedge.
And you can see that it's not developed so much, or well, some of it's not.
Correct. So as you look down Winchester Road, the hedgerow provides that sense of separation because there's no built form, and it accentuates the distance. And although the distance is smaller down Lutterworth Road, you still have a stretch of strong hedgerow, no visible built form behind it, that exists to operate between the business park and what will eventually be Davidson's.
You have a section there, the difference in that there is a gap in it. There's the entrance into the golf course site, there's the signage, you can see the activities that are going on in there. But there is the length of the appeal site that's got the hedge on it. Is you're not aware of the built development apart from when you pass it and look in through the entrance. But you are aware of the development on the other side of the road.
Right, I just want to look at the effect then of the development. So CD 2.19 and the illustrative layout.
Yes, I've got that.
This is the potential layout which you're relying on as the latest version for the inspector.
Yes, it's just an illustrative.
Illustrative,
layout.
exactly.
Yeah.
I said potential. I hope I did. And therefore it's the only potential layout that's currently before the inspector.
Yes.
There's no labels on the illustrative layout in terms of building heights, but we know from the DAS, don't we, and we can go there if we need to, CD 1.8, that the residential buildings are anticipated to be 2 to 2.5 stories.
Yes.
And that would be including down Main Street in particular.
Yes.
And the Main Street is obviously the spine road that exists from the access through all the way around past the football pitch.
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, sorry,
I believe so.
thank you. There's no indicative height on the retail unit, which is shown north of the access.
No.
But the intention is that the retail unit would allow for the relocation of all of the businesses, say for the golf course, currently operating on the Blaby golf course site.
Yeah, it's probably one for Mr. Cousins rather than me, but...
Yeah, but in terms of how we can anticipate what the building might look like, that is one for you, isn't it? And the effect of it on the sense of separation.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it looks like is for later.
It's for reserved
isn't it?
matters.
Yeah.
Exactly, but
But it'll be a commercial building on the frontage.
Yes. And the intention is that that would house, potentially house, the gym, the salon, taxi rank and dance school that currently operate from the Blaby golf course.
Yes.
And so whilst there's no building heights given for the retail element, to house those uses in that location, one can equally anticipate a 2 to 2.5 story building.
I would anticipate maybe a 2-story building. I wouldn't have thought a half-story would work for commercial uses.
No, true. Yes, I don't think, well, I'm trying to think what you might operate in a dormer. Yeah, probably none of them. Fair point. In terms then as well to consider the effect of the development, we also need to look at the ARB report, just to understand the tree retention. So that's CD 1.3. Might put a taxi rank, the taxi operators in the dormer maybe, if you had it.
Maybe.
See what Mr. Custon says about taxi operators in dormer buildings. Suspect it's not determinative. Do you have the tree retention plan?
I've got the tree plans.
So if you're in the ARB report, have you got the plans in front of you in hard copy?
I've got them in hard copy, or I can look at...
No, hard copy's fine. It's the tree retention plan.
Yes.
And so when we look at the Lutterworth Road edge, there's intended to be hedgerow will be retained along the Lutterworth Road boundary,
That's the intention, yes.
with then inside the site the removal from what is currently hole 1 or hole 2, one of the tree lines that you can see in red hatching, which would be removed and replaced by built form.
Yes.
And so when the inspector is coming to look at the effect that the development would have on the sense of separation, there's no photo montages that he can refer to for this location. And so it's a case of building the picture from that illustrative plan, the ARB report and the DAS.
Yes.
Accepting, anticipating what your answers may be as we get there, it's an outline application and there will be matters to be determined at reserved matters stage.
Yes.
Though there is a condition that I think is being worked up that the scheme should be in accordance with or broadly in accordance with the illustrative master plan.
Yes.
So taking the illustrative master plan and thinking about the views that one might have from, for example, viewpoint K, at 2 to 2.5 stories of residential development and 2-story retail, commercial, sui generis unit, it's reasonable for the inspector to assume that they will be visible over the hedgerow as one walks or drives down Lutterworth Road.
Yes, and certainly through the entrance to the site. I think as you get further back, you know, the southern end of the site shown as Suds feature, and the housing gets set further back at that point. If that hedge is retained and looked at, I'm not sure that you would spot the even 2.5 story if it's sufficiently far back, but you'd certainly see the stuff towards the site entrance and the commercial building I would expect you would see, and you see it next to the Davidson's housing.
Even if one only sees the top of the roof line, thinking back to your answers with regard to the garden centre kitchen showroom and how that affected the sense of separation, even if it is only the top of the roof line, the top of a gable, that would have a negative impact in terms of the sense of separation, in the same way that you said the garden centre does.
I think if you would be aware there was development there, because it's not down to one viewpoint, people aren't dropped from space to one of these photo viewpoints, other they travel up and down the road, and you would certainly be aware that there was that development in there. There would not be any separation between anything on that bit of appeal site, but I don't feel, I've said it many times, that that's what separates Blaby from Whetstone anyway, but it would mean built form, yeah, extended from the existing settlement through Davidson's and to the business park.
I think it's clear where the point of difference lies then. So perhaps if I put it this way, in terms of spatial and perceptual separation across the appeal site as one walks down Lutterworth Road, the appeal scheme would reduce a spatial sense of perception, and it would reduce a spatial separation, and it would reduce a perceptual separation. But your point is that doesn't matter because you've got development on the right-hand side.
It would reduce that separation you've just described between the business park and Davidson site. I don't think it would reduce any separation or sense of identity of settlements between Blaby and Whetstone.
And that's because of the development that exists along the western edge.
And how you understand that area, and do you feel that that bit of land is something that provides a difference between those settlements? And I don't think it does.
And so, on your assessment of spatial and perceptual separation, if the inspector were to agree with Mr. Collinge that there is a sense of separation that exists by virtue of the rugby club as an acceptable land use, your ultimate conclusion would be different, wouldn't it?
Sorry, can you say
Because,
that again?
so your answer was, yes, there would be a spatial effect on the sense of separation. Yes, there would be a perceptual effect on the sense of separation, in that something is going there and you can see it.
Yes,
But
there would be that sense of...
But in policy terms, let me put the point, but in policy terms, you don't think that leads to a breach because the western element and the built form there is so influential that you feel like you're already in Blaby.
Because any separation, spatial or perceptual, that would be gone, because you would join, would be between Blaby Business Park and the Davidson site. That isn't, in my view, protected by the purposes of that policy. The purpose is separate identities of Blaby and Whetstone Countersthorpe, and I don't think it changes that understanding because it's not in the location that would affect that. The understanding of those places is already affected by the built development that lies along Lutterworth Road and the different uses and character of it. don't see any green wedge assessment that sets up, you know, tells us why it's important to have a gap between the business park and the existing settlement edge. That's not what it's about. It's you have to go back to the functions.
And so you would then distinguish yourself from the conclusion in the green wedge assessment that we've looked at already, CD 8.3, electronic paper 36, electronic 37, in the concluding remarks. This parcel of the green wedge provides for a clear separation between Blaby, Whetstone and Countersthorpe. Most importantly, between Blaby and Whetstone along the Lutterworth Road. So you fundamentally disagree with that conclusion?
Well, I think Lutterworth Road, yes, but it's at the back of the built form along Lutterworth Road to the west that I think is the, that's where the important separation lies.
So at the back of the built form to the west, so behind the buildings fronting Lutterworth Road and into parcel A. Is that what you're directing me?
Well, parcel B does include bits of that, doesn't it? Because they go over it. But yes, down around the rugby club buildings, the garden centre, the commercial uses. That when you get past them, that's when I think there's a sense of separation to Whetstone. Those buildings, in my view, feel like they're part of Blaby.
That's what you've said. I just want to make sure that, but this is looking at parcel.
Well, it depends what this
is
means,
looking at
doesn't it?
parcel
It says
B. If you just wait, Mr. Holliday.
Sorry.
This is looking at parcel B,
Yeah.
which is predominantly focused on the appeal site, and therefore includes predominantly the land to the east of Lutterworth Road over to Winchester Road. And the conclusion is this parcel of the green wedge provides for a clear separation between Blaby, Whetstone and Countersthorpe. Most importantly, between Blaby and Whetstone along Lutterworth Road. You are, through your evidence, fundamentally now disagreeing with that conclusion because you say that part of Lutterworth Road doesn't matter. You've got the development on the western edge. You're already in Blaby.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter or I fundamentally disagree with it. I'm saying, you know, it depends what you mean by Lutterworth Road. Is it the things along it?
Well,
things may have changed since this was written as well, in that maybe there was a couple of buildings at the business park and it did effectively just sit in a bigger green space when this was written. But now, that's how I experience it.
By mentioning Lutterworth Road, they probably mean Lutterworth Road, don't they? And the experience as you go down Lutterworth Road. So, you are now, just so I can understand your final position, it is that the green wedge in this location along Lutterworth Road is not most important for providing a clear separation between Blaby and Whetstone, and your case is it's not the most important because of the built form that has developed along the western edge.
Yeah, I think the most important is to the west of the built form on Lutterworth Road. That is the bit that matters, in my view, to providing the separation.
So
I would phrase it differently to how it's written in there. But I think it's a difference of phrasing rather than a fundamental difference of opinion.
So just so that I understand then, you are agreeing with the green wedge assessment because your view is that it is talking about the experience along Lutterworth Road, including that land which you can't see from Lutterworth Road that exists behind the built form in a separate parcel. Is that your point of agreement?
I think I've said what my view is on how it works, how it's phrased down, how I describe it as like a bit different, but that's how I think on the ground you experience it now. I wasn't there 10 years ago to comment in detail on how they've written this.
Right, the footpaths. And your plan. Accessible green space and linkages with appeal scheme in place, figure 18.
Yes, got that.
I think in terms of the links, I think we know where we are. Your evidence earlier was that there's no additional links being provided. The question of the internal routes, etc., I think have been ventilated well enough.
Okay.
I just want to think about the views into open and undeveloped land. And you accepted in chief that users currently, as you go down that path, which the inspector has done or certainly will do, is built form. If you're going from west to east, built form on your left-hand side, open golf course on your right,
Yes.
which is considered to be open and undeveloped land.
Yes.
That would change to built form on your left-hand side, to housing estate built form on your right-hand side.
Yeah, and some green space.
And some green space, but you are going to see the backs, the fronts, the sides, whatever it is, of houses once they're built.
You'll see some, yes. I mean, you're essentially in a bit of a green corridor down that path. There's a lot of vegetation along it, but you'll be aware there was houses there.
And so along that route, with now built form on either side, there would be a removal of any sense of separation in this location, because you're no longer looking out over open and undeveloped land.
No, you wouldn't be. You would feel you were in Blaby, rather than necessarily on the edge of it.
I think in terms of the use of the footpaths and the user numbers, I think in fairness to you, it's Mr. Cusson's evidence, and so perhaps I'll test that with him. But in terms of the scheme that's provided, we've got your answer to point of agreement. There's no additional links between being provided between the open countryside and the urban area. You're using existing footpaths already in place.
No additional links. One route could be made more accessible to more people.
And I think in fairness, Mr. Collins and Mr. Baker Adams both accepted that it might become a more attractive route through the public open space than through the golf course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holliday.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Miss Morrissey.
Thank you, sir. So can we start by going back to the policy questions that you were asked at the beginning? Could you go to CD 6.11, which is policy CS16? You were up, CD 6.11.
Yes, got that.
And you were asked various questions by my friend about various objectives set out in this policy. Can I just ask you about your views on a couple of the objectives that were not mentioned in your cross-examination? If you go to electronic page 2, do you see there's a heading, policy CS16 green wedges?
Yes.
And then you see there's a heading, strategic objectives.
Yes.
Yeah. To maximise, leave sport aside, that's from the witness, recreation opportunities. Does this scheme, in your view, maximise recreation opportunities?
Yes, it does. You've got 10 hectares of green infrastructure.
Yeah.
Going to be open to anybody, different opportunities.
The next one, protect important areas of the district's natural environment. First of all, species and habitats. Does it comply with that?
Yeah, as far as I understand it, it's going to be a net gain requirement.
Yeah. Landscape.
Yes.
I'll leave geology. Improve biodiversity, wildlife habitats and corridors. Comply with that?
It will do.
Yeah. Now, I think there are other objectives that are probably not relevant directly to your evidence, but if you go down to the next page, I don't think there's any issue between anyone about cultural heritage, and the others are not really for you, so let's leave that. Now, second thing on policy, it was put to you a number of times that the green wedge assessment, which is CD 8.3, and we'll come to the text in a moment, but I don't think we need to go there yet. It was put to you that that doesn't express any explicit view on whether parcel A, parcel B or parcel C is the most important in green wedge terms. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
So, and you agreed, and that's fine, that it doesn't. Can I just ask you your view, though, your professional view? What's your professional view about which of those parcels is most important to the separation of Blaby and Whetstone? Is it A or B?
Well, it's A, because that's essentially the bit that does separate the two settlements. And I think the assessment itself is clear that that's what it's important for, on that bit of green wedge. It's not particularly some of the other green wedge functions, it's a separation one that's important for that.
Yeah, okay. And then on this issue about what is the most important part of the wedge, could we look, please, again at your proof of evidence, at paragraph 3.14. So we know...
Missed the number there.
Oh, sorry, your 3.14.
3.14.
3.14. So we know, I mean, obviously, the questions you were asked about what's seen as important in the green wedge assessment. The neighbourhood plan you set out at 3.14 onwards, and at 3.16 you refer to what's said in the neighbourhood plan at 4.81. And then you make some comment on that on 3.17 and 3.18. So what does that tell us, please, if anything, about the most important part of the green wedge? And I know this is about character, but you'll see that text you're quoting in 4.81 is about green wedge, isn't it?
It is. Well, it is at 3.16, Blaby separated from Whetstone by the Blaby bypass and green wedge, which runs alongside the bypass. And then it goes on at 3.80, well, paragraph 4.82 from the document from the neighbourhood plan. Blaby and Whetstone, a particularly sensitive green wedge. So,
Okay.
yeah, and we're not within that area.
So the appeal site's not within that area, do you say?
Not mine.
No. Okay, thank you. Now, I wanted to ask you, can we look at your appendices, please? And I'd like you to go to figure 11 and 12, which are viewpoints J and K. Now, you were asked a number of questions about the extent to which the existing hedge that runs alongside the appeal site and the fact that the buildings in the appeal site are single story with pitched roofs.
Yes.
You were asking questions about the impact that makes on visual perception from Luttersworth Road, what you see and what you don't see. Now, when you reach the entrance at viewpoint J, how would you characterise what one sees in that entrance at the moment in terms of built form?
Well, there's a bit of a mix going on. There's obviously the single-storey buildings at the golf centre. I think you can see beyond some of the business park roofs.
Yeah.
And you've got a sort of jumble of signage and car parking, and
Yeah.
there's obviously quite a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
the feeling that you get.
Yes. And the buildings that you see that are part of the appeal site, I think Mr. Collins in his evidence accepted they appear as a sort of single building.
Yes.
A number of buildings. Is that your view, or do you take a different view?
They largely look as a
Yeah.
single building, whether there's
Yeah.
odd bits on the end that might be separate, but it's mainly one building.
Are they small scale in your view?
I wouldn't say small scale.
No. Now, you were asked some questions. I'm going to ask you to go somewhere. You were asked some questions about the present situation and the absence of built form on the appeal site as matters stand, so the absence of built form in the baseline. As it were.
Yes.
Now, I just want to ask you about you've obviously seen viewpoint J, what you can see in the entrance. Could we look at CD 2.19, which you were asked some questions about towards the end of your cross-examination, which is the illustrative master plan?
Yes, got that.
So, just help me with that. So, first of all, if you start at the southern edge of the site, hedgerow, so south of the access. Yeah.
Yes,
Hedgerow along the front, retained or not?
retained.
What then lies immediately behind that hedgerow in that southern section, south of the access?
Attenuation pond.
Attenuation pond. And then what is shown between the attenuation pond and the housing?
Some planting.
Planting. Okay. So what overall effect, in your view, will that have in terms of perception from the road on that southern part?
Well, from that southern part, when you're looking across the hedge, I don't think you will see anything much. Certainly of that part. You might look up the road and see the commercial building, depending how close it is to the edge.
Okay. And then obviously you've got a view in the access, which you discussed.
Yes.
You can see built form in the access. What's the current situation? Can
Or you see built form.
Yeah. Okay. And then you were asked some questions about the commercial building, which is north of the access on Lutterworth Road. And I think at one point you made a comment that would, I think the way you put it was that it would be seen with the Davidson scheme, I think.
Yes.
Can we just look at that, your rebuttal on that, please? Because if you look at the illustrative master plan, you'll see that commercial building butts up to an area where the red line cuts in, doesn't it? Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. And then if we go to your rebuttal at page 5, that place where that little odd shape in the top corner where the red line cuts in,
Yes.
does that relate to what one can see in the plan that you've put in at 2.8 of the Davidson site?
Yes, it does. It's
Yeah.
where the housing's shown.
So there's housing in that little
And
segment.
at the moment, you've got quite a lot of vegetation on
Yeah.
It's a sort of scrubby corner of the golf course, and that's all got to go to provide the access and the development site.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm sure they could plant a new hedge in time, but you're going to be aware of the houses.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. Now, move on to some other things. I wanted to go back to the green wedge assessment, which is CD 8.3, and on which you were asked a number of questions. And I wanted to pick up a couple of specific things. So first of all, could you go to page 36? I think that's electronically. It might just be, hang on a second.
I've got electronic 36.
Yeah, well, actually, could we actually start by going, sorry, to electronic page 10? So this is a
Yeah.
summary assessment of parcel B, which is, I think, where you mostly were discussing, obviously, with my own friend. The summary assessment, the parcel of Greenwich broadly fulfills its function in providing clear separation. What do you read from the word broadly?
That it does to an extent.
Yeah.
It's not a strong
No.
description.
Okay, and then you'll see in that you talked to my own friend about the number of changes that there have been since on the ground since 2016. If you look at the third paragraph, houses have recently been developed to the south of Whetstone. We probably don't need to worry about that. But then the next one, if you go down to the next page, well, to the bottom of that page, it says some amendments will be required. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And then there's a potential candidate site has been identified east of Lutterworth Road between the recent developments at Leicester Lions Rugby Club and land south of Lincoln Drive. So that's some of the change that's been
Yes.
that you've been talking about. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then if we go to 36.
Sorry, page 36.
Yeah, electronic 36. Sorry, I think it's actually just give me a moment. Yeah, it's actually electronic 37, it's numbered 36. Again, we've got the concluding remarks that you were taking to my learned friend on B. Yes, and I just wanted to ask you about this. So you were asked, obviously, I think, a number of times about that first sentence where it says, most importantly, between Blaby, Whetstone along the Luttermouth Road. You see that you were asked about
Yes.
that. And then if you go to the lower down in that paragraph, you'll see about 4 lines from the end. It says the extension of development at Whetstone and the ability to view it across the landscape from the edge of Countersthorpe makes the southern part of this green wedge more important to maintain a clear separation of perception or distance between the settlements. Does that tell us anything about relative importance, in your view, of the various parts of the green wedge?
Well, it says that that part's more important to maintain clear sense of separation.
Thank you. Now, obviously, I think you made clear, you made clear to my learned friend a number of times that your judgment overall was, is predicated on the perceptual elements
Yes.
being important and more important than the plan.
Yes, that's right.
approach. So I wanted to ask you in that regard, could you look at Mr. Collinge's proof? Mr. Collinge's proof at page 21. And in particular, his paragraph 4.2.22. So here he's discussing Countersthorpe rather than Whetstone. He talks about the reduction in the gap. And then he says, 4th line down, it's accepted that in reality the degree of visual perception between either the existing settled area north of the appeal site or the development proposals, the appeal scheme and Countersthorpe is limited by the degree of intervening tree and vegetation cover.
Yes.
So what view does Mr. Collinge take of the relative importance of visual and plan related matters?
Well, he's obviously attaching a lot of importance to the visual perception, the understanding in terms of how that particular bit of gap between Countersthorpe and Blaby functions or would be affected by the appeal scheme.
Yeah. And if you go back to the green wedge assessment, please, at electronic page 6.
Yes.
There's the table with the various criteria, questions that you've both applied and that were used. Prevent the merging of settlements. What does the second question tell us about?
Are there features provide a visual perception of distance between settlements?
Yeah. What does that language tell you?
Visual perception is very important.
Thank you. Okay. Now. Yeah, could you go please to CD 14.8, because I want to come back to this discussion you had, my learned friend, about things that have changed on the ground since the green wedge assessment was produced. So this is the appendices to Mr. Cusson's proof. And could you go to electronic page 78, please? Which should be his figure 20.
Yes, I've got that.
Yeah. Now I'll come back to the business park and the discussion you have with my learned friend about what may have changed there in a moment. But just in terms of what this shows, the purple that one can see on the western side of the road, we know that's the rugby club and the associated housing. How much difference has that made, in your view, to the gap and the perception of the gap on Luttersworth Road?
Well, it must have made quite a difference. You can see the amount of purple that's shown for the application.
And how sensitive do you regard that part of the gap there as compared to the appeal site?
Well, I think it's much more sensitive in terms of the gap between Blaby and Countersthorpe, and I think that was reflected. I think I have seen a plan for the rugby club development that showed basically a cut-off or a setback from the bypass that I think was specifically actually built in through discussions to keep that separation, because that is where that corridor along the bypasses where the gap is experienced in my view.
Yeah. And then obviously on the other side of the road from the purple, the blue is the Davidson scheme.
Yes.
Which I think is part, my own friend agreed with you, is part of the baseline, and we've agreed. Now, could we talk about the business park and what's changed there? Because you had some questions from my learned friend about how that might have changed in terms of amount of built form and position. And there's one thing that we can look at to help us in relation to this. Could you find, please, in the core documents, CD 14.2, which should actually be Mr. Smith's golf proof, but he's got some Google images which might help us. Okay, so if you can find that, it's pages 5 and 6.
Electronic 5 or
That's a good question.
no paper, I think.
I think it's paper. Yeah, it's paper. I think electronically, electronically it's pages 8 and 9.
Yes.
So maybe we start with the second of them, which is the site today.
Yes.
See that? And we can see, I ask you to sort of just note, you can see the various buildings and the car park that make up the appeal site frontage.
Yes.
And you can see that U shape, which goes around sort of the car parking spaces. Do you see the sort of long U shape that comes in from the access? You see?
Yes.
That? Yeah. So just ask you to note where that is. And you can see that if you look down at the business park, you can see the buildings that are there currently, some of which lie almost directly below that U shape. Do you see
Yes,
that?
I do.
Yeah. If we just go back to the previous page, this is from 1999, but one gets an image of the building that was actually there as a business park previously, and you can see it. So first question is that, in your view, is that further away or closer to the road than the buildings currently are? If you take
Well, it's closer.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot more on the golf course site as well, isn't
Yeah.
there?
Well, there is, yeah. I mean, looking at it in plan form, how would you characterise that in terms of the objective that my learned friend put to you about the absence of built form?
Well, it's not absence, is it? It's quite a collection.
Yeah. Okay. But so the business park buildings closer to the road. What about the scale of those buildings and the number of them?
Yeah, the scale. There are bigger buildings. I have previously looked, and they're not in my evidence, but I have looked at Google Earth, and you can see quite a change over time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now just a few other bits and pieces. Yes. Can we go back to your appendices to your proof, please? And you were asked some questions about viewpoints B and C. So that's figures 3 and 4. Obviously, this is relevant to this is Winchester Road and the separation between Countersthorpe and,
Yes.
and Blaby. But you were asked questions about what one saw in these pictures, the extent of hedgerow, the appreciation that one gave you of separation in this scene. Now, what I'd just like, if you just hold your, if you can hold on to where you are on B and C, could you then look at K first of all? So, just by way of, I mean, obviously you were asked some questions about where the sign was between Blaby and Countersthorpe and how much that played out, and you were asked about the hedges and stuff. But if you compare viewpoint K and viewpoint C, can you just help me with to what extent they are different or the same in terms of what one sees? Vegetation, whatever.
Well, on C, there's a very clear distinction between where Blaby stops.
Yeah.
There is the hedges, the green at the side of the roads before you get to Countersthorpe, and it's a very distinct start and stop on Winchester Road.
Yeah.
It's not it's completely different when you get to Lutterworth Road. There might be sections of hedge, you know, on the front of the golf course, but there is no open, undeveloped area. You're conscious all the way along there of built form.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a huge difference. And it's one, look at all the photos we want, but it's really just for the inspector to go and have a look at on site and experience in the round.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you then go to your viewpoint L, I don't think I'm not sure you did go to with my learning friend, but he did ask you some questions about the extent to which one would see the business park buildings above hedges. How would you categorise those hedges?
Pretty low when you get to the entrance of the business park. Obviously, you get further away and behind it, as I was at the roundabout, then it's different. But there's a pretty clear view in there to some pretty tall buildings.
Okay. And then you were asked some questions about viewpoint P, which is on the roundabout, and about the garden centre building. And how many stories it was, etc. So I just want to be clear on your position here. So first of all, how would you describe the scale of those garden centre buildings?
Well, they're not small scale. They're not huge buildings. No. They're compared to, say, the business park, they're obviously smaller, but they're not small like a domestic house or anything. No. And I think we shouldn't get too hung up on stories, because obviously single-storey commercial building and a bungalow are very different things.
Very different things.
Or as you can see on the business park, there might be two-storey buildings there, but the office-type spaces are inevitably a lot taller than a house would be.
Okay, that's fine. And in terms of the garden centre, we know it's in the Green Wedge. Appropriate use?
No.
Thank you. You were then asked some questions about the sign for the golf centre and what one would see. Is this simply marking an appropriate use? And I think you said to my learning friend, well, it's marking a number of uses. I mean, it's difficult to see from the pictures, but the inspector will see on site. But one sees signs. The sign includes signs for the beauty bar, the dance academy, Tusk Fitness, the taxi service, and a number of other. Appropriate?
No.
Thank you. I think that's everything. Thank you very much, Mr. Holiday.
Just one from me, Mr. Holiday. In your rebuttal evidence, there's the extract there from the Davidson's development. Now, if I understand it right, that was an outline application. So my question is, what's the significance of the master plan? Is there, for example, is there any condition tying it, or is there any likelihood of development being in that shape? This is page 5 of your
Yes, I'm not aware whether there's a condition or not. I think the only thing I would say is that it's a relatively small site, and there'll be only so many ways you can lay it out, that I don't expect it's going to be fundamentally different to that. Things like suds basins usually have to go where they have to go because of levels and those kind of issues, so I would expect that to be in, you know, it might be a slightly different shape or whatever. I'm sure the access will have been fixed. So it may not be exactly like that, but I doubt it will be a lot different.
Okay. So you suggesting then that Suds Pond is actually in the lowest point of the site?
I suspect it will be, or where it'll connect to a ditch or something so that they can drain it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all from me, so you can step down now. Thank you.
So just for your note, you will have seen we've got the permission in at CD 13.14. I don't think there's any specific condition that ties it to the master plan that I can see.
Okay. Thank you all. Right. I think probably That's it then, is it? Just one bit of housekeeping from me. I think I did mention via the case officer just before the start of the inquiry, I was trying to find the SIL compliance statements, and I did have another look over the weekend, and I've still not managed to find any. So I'm not sure if it's me, but I couldn't find anything on the... What I have found is there's a reference to the police authority who put a statement in, I think, in response to the application, but I've not found any specific statements in relation to the appeal evidence. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer now, but it would be, if they haven't been produced, it would be useful to have comments from county and boroughs on SIL as in the compliance statement.
Yes, sir, and thank you for saying you don't want an immediate response, because my response was going to be, I'll need to take instructions.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a county policy. I've not actually seen, I mean, what I normally get is some sort of table to check it.
It's not in the core docs, but there's one dated the 12th of March 2026 from the county that has the table, and it's headed document says it is their SIL compliance statement, but it hasn't made it its way into the core docs.
Well, perhaps I can leave it with the parties, and if for any reason they have been omitted, then perhaps if that could be done in a timely way, then that's fine. But I'm not expecting an answer now.
No. And so I just wondered whether, are you likely to have any questions or queries about the section 106? I mean, for example, do you want us to run through it, or is the note enough?
The note is very helpful, so thank you for that. I think it'd probably be worth spending a little bit of time on it, but I don't think it will warrant an extensive amount of time.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. And then, so obviously there is also the issue about the submission of the final version of the 106. Obviously, we're not going to finish it entirely until we've had the session, and so we'll then need some time. I'll probably be asking you for 14 days if that's possible.
Yeah, I'm not one of these inspectors that jumps up and down and requires it immediately, so
Very
there's
grateful.
a bit of common sense for the pigeon or whatever mechanism it is to get round the parties. No, and I appreciate that. Takes a bit of time, so
thank you, sir. That's appreciated.
You know, I think we can agree a sensible date.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Robson, anything from you?
No, so just a linked point. The council does signings on a Thursday, so obviously we'll need some time to make sure that signings happen.
I mean, normally, Miss Morrissey, I'm sort of looking to sort of 3 weeks, really. Yeah. Appreciate. Well, also we've got probably might have a bank holiday. Well, we will have a bank holiday in between.
Yeah, so that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So if there's nothing more from any of the parties, we'll draw today to a close and begin 9:30 tomorrow. So that'll be with Mr. Stacey. Okay. Right. Well, if there's any more, we'll say good afternoon at this junction and close the inquiry for today. So we'll reconvene tomorrow at 9:30. So thank you all.